I am Ada, and I am 68 years old. I always thought the years after my husband Frank passed would be peaceful ones spent near my daughter and granddaughter. I was wrong. It all shattered on a Friday evening when my daughter Eleanor stood at the door of my little cottage. Her face flushed with a rage I never thought I would see, directed at me, and she screamed words I never imagined I would hear. "You need to stop living off me. Before I tell you everything that led to that moment, and what I did next that made her call me 20 times. In one day, I want to ask you, where are you listening to this from? From your own home, where you hope to feel safe? If you understand the value of a true sanctuary, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. My journey is about to begin. For 2 years after Frank died, I truly believed I had built something beautiful from the pieces. I sold our family home, the one with too many stairs and memories in every room. With part of the money, we built a small, charming accessory dwelling unit in the backyard of my daughter Eleanor's property. It was a cozy 800 square feet with a little porch where I could have my morning coffee. The rest of the money from the house sale, a respectable sum, went into my savings account. That was our agreement. I would pay Eleanor a modest monthly sum, a token rent really, for the ground my cottage sat on. I used my small teacher's pension to cover my groceries, my utilities, and the little extras for my granddaughter Maya. I was not a burden. I was a contributing part of the household. My days had a gentle rhythm. 3 afternoons a week I would be waiting when Maya got off the school bus. I helped her with her history projects, listened to her talk about friends and school drama, and taught her how to make Frank's famous oatmeal cookies. I fed their cat when they went away for the weekend. I was the emergency contact for the plumber. I felt useful. I felt woven into the fabric of their lives. The first sign that the fabric was unraveling was not a tear, but a subtle loosening of the threads. It came during Sunday dinners, which slowly became less frequent. My son-in-law, Robert, a real estate agent, began making comments. They were always dressed as observations. "Property values in this zip code have increased 20% in 18 months, he'd say, chewing his steak. "A unit like this, fully furnished, could pull in over $2,000 a month on Airbnb. Easy." He'd look around my living room as if appraising it. Eleanor would swat his arm playfully. "Robert, don't be crass. Mom loves it here." But her defense lacked its old warmth. It sounded routine. Then came the talk of their new loan, a kitchen renovation for the main house. "Just updating the countertops and appliances," Eleanor said with a sigh one evening. "But the quotes are astronomical. It feels like a second mortgage." Her voice was heavy with a stress I recognized. "Eleanor, if it helps, I can adjust my monthly payment." I offered immediately, my mind already calculating a fair increase. I never wanted to be a financial strain. She waved a hand, not meeting my eyes. No, Mom, it's not about the money. It's just, everything is so expensive now." The way she said it, the dismissive wave, felt like a door being closed gently in my face. If it wasn't about the money, what was it about? The question sat in my stomach like a cold stone. I started to become hyper-aware of my presence. Did I use too much hot water for my evening bath? Should I offer to pay for a portion of the grocery delivery, since I sometimes added a few items to their list? I began to feel like a tenant on a month-to-month lease whose quietness was being scrutinized. The warmth of the cottage began to feel like borrowed heat. The chills settled in for good that winter. Eleanor started working later. Our shared meals dwindled to maybe once a week. And even then she was distracted checking her phone, talking about work pressures with Robert in a shorthand I wasn't meant to understand. The laughter that used to float from their kitchen into mine was replaced by the low, tense murmur of arguments. I tried not to listen, but in a small backyard sound travels. One night, the murmur sharpened into clear words through my slightly open bedroom window. "It's not just the space, Robert, it's the permanence of it." Eleanor's voice was strained. "I'm just saying we have an asset sitting there that's not performing. We carry the insurance, the property tax on the land. It's a drain. A drain. That was Eleanor, but her voice lacked fight. It sounded tired, resigned. A drain. That's what I was. A financial drain. The cold stone in my stomach turned to ice. The next month, I noticed a line item on my bank statement I didn't recognize. A charge from the local utility company larger than my usual bill. I logged into my account I shared with them for the cottage utilities. The charge was for the main house's water and sewer, a hefty sum. My polite inquiry over tea the next day sparked a wildfire. "Mom, we're a family," Eleanor snapped, setting her cup down so hard it clattered. "You live here. You contribute. How can you nickel and dime us over utilities? Do you have any idea what we pay for everything?" I was stunned into silence. This wasn't the girl I raised. "It's not about nickel and diming, Eleanor. It's about clarity. We had an agreement. My utilities are separate. If that's changed, we should talk about it openly, not have charges appear on my account." "It's always a transaction with you, isn't it?" Her words were knives sharp and aimed to wound. "You keep a tally. Well, life isn't that neat. Sometimes you just help because you're family." The hypocrisy stole my breath. I was helping every single day, but now my help was expected. My contributions invisible, and any request for financial transparency was framed as miserly. Then came the vacation brochure. It was left on their kitchen counter, a glossy pamphlet for a luxury resort in Bora Bora. "Second honeymoon surprise" was scrawled across it in Robert's handwriting. My heart sank. They were planning a lavish trip. No mention of it to me, no thought of, "Will you be okay for 2 weeks, Mom?" Instead, a week later, it was presented as a foregone conclusion. "We're taking a much-needed break, Mom. You'll keep an eye on Maya and the house, right? We'll leave the emergency numbers." It wasn't a question. It was an assumption. An assumption that my time, my presence, was at their disposal. A free resource to be managed. The anger that bubbled up was new to me. It was a quiet, simmering thing mixed with a profound grief. I was no longer a mother. I was a convenience. The breaking point was, in hindsight, something so small. It was a Thursday. My arthritis was flaring, a deep ache in my knees from the damp weather. I had just finished cleaning up after making lunch, and I was moving a vase, a beautiful cut crystal one, Frank had given me for our 30th anniversary. My grip, stiff with pain, faltered. The vase slipped, hitting the edge of the sink before crashing to the floor in a devastating shower of glittering pieces. I stood there, hand to my mouth, grief for the object and for my own clumsiness welling up. Before I could even kneel to pick up the shards, the door to my cottage flew open. Eleanor stood there, not with concern, but with fury. "My God, Mom, what now?" Her eyes swept the floor. "That was an antique. That was valuable." "It was an accident, Eleanor. My hands—" Her words were a physical blow. "Eleanor, please." "Please what?" she shouted, her voice raw. "Please understand. I do understand. I understand that you're living off us. You contribute nothing meaningful. You're holding us back." The world narrowed to her face, twisted in a resentment I had been blind to. Robert appeared behind her in the doorway, a silent, approving statue. "Eleanor, that's not true. We had an arrangement. I pay rent. I help with Maya." "You help!" She let out a bitter laugh. "That's not help. That's basic. You are a drain on our resources, on our energy, on our future. I want you to stop living off me." The air left my lungs. The words hung in the silence, more final than any door slam. She took a step closer, her finger pointing. "If you're not willing to get a real job, to actually pull your own weight, then you need to get out. I want you out of here. Do you understand me?" There it was. The ultimatum. Thrown at me over the shattered remains of my past in the small sanctuary I had built with my own money. I looked from her furious face to Robert's cold one. I did not cry. I did not yell. A strange, icy calm descended over me. All the hurt, the confusion, the injustice crystallized into one sharp, clear point. I looked her directly in the eye and said very quietly, "I understand you perfectly." She stared, perhaps expecting tears, pleading. My calm seemed to infuriate her more. She turned and stalked out, Robert following. The door closed. I stood amidst the wreckage, the shattered crystal, the shattered illusion of family. The quiet after the storm was absolute. And in that absolute quiet, a plan was born. Not a plan of tears, but of ledgers and legal documents. It was time for a final accounting. The next morning I woke with the dawn. The grief was there, a heavy blanket, but beneath it was a steel core I hadn't felt in years. I made coffee, I sat at my small desk, and I began. First, the facts. I opened my filing cabinet. I laid out every document. The property agreement for the ADU clearly stating my ownership of the structure on their land. The bank statements showing my monthly transfers to Eleanor. The records of the substantial lump sum from my house sale that was now my savings. My pension statements. I made a list of everything I did. Hours spent driving Maya, helping with homework, house-sitting, pet care. I calculated a fair market rate for those services. The numbers were startling. Far from being a drain, I was subsidizing their lifestyle with unpaid labor and a below-market rent. The anger was now a tool, not a master. It focused me. I called my old friend Gerald Harris. He was Frank's attorney and had become mine. His voice was a deep, calm rumble. "Ada, is everything all right?" "Gerald, I need to see you today if possible. It's about my estate planning." My voice didn't waver. 2 hours later, I was in his oak-paneled office. I told him everything dispassionately, like I was reciting a case history. The agreement, the utility bill, the vacation, the final confrontation. I showed him the documents. He listened, his expression growing grave. "Legally, Ada, you are on very solid ground. The ADU is your separate property. Your financial contributions are documented. Her threats have no legal merit for eviction given your ownership interest and established tenancy." "That's not what I need, Gerald," I said, my hands folded neatly in my lap. "I don't want to fight her in court. I want to rewrite the future." I laid out my plan. I wanted a new will, and I wanted a revocable living trust established immediately. He took notes, asking precise questions. "The principal asset will be the cash from my savings, the value of the ADU structure, and the collection of first edition histories Frank left," I stated. "I want the trust to be the beneficiary, and I want the trust terms to be very specific." Gerald looked up. "Specific how?" "The sole beneficiary of the trust is my granddaughter Maya, but she does not receive a single distribution until she turns 25. The trust will pay for her college tuition books and reasonable living expenses directly to the institutions. Upon distribution at 25, she must have completed her undergraduate degree. Furthermore, the trustee, which will be you, Gerald, if you'll accept, must have discretion to withhold funds if Maya demonstrates, let's call it, a prolonged failure of moral character, or is unduly influenced by her parents against me." He leaned back. "You're disinheriting Eleanor." "Not exactly," I said, though we both knew I was. "I'm ensuring my legacy supports the future of the one person in that house who has shown unconditional love and who may need protection. I am making it structurally impossible for Eleanor or Robert to access a single penny of my estate. They get nothing. Maya gets everything, but only when she's mature enough to handle it wisely, and only if she remains the good-hearted person she is now." It was brutal, it was surgical, it was the most unmaternal thing I had ever contemplated, and it felt utterly, devastatingly right. "I'll draft the documents," Gerald said softly. "It's your right, Ada, and for what it's worth, I think it's a wise if painful decision." I signed the papers in his office that afternoon. The pen felt heavy, but my signature was steady. On the drive home, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty, and then filled with a terrible, powerful clarity. The final piece was my exit. I couldn't stay. Using my laptop at the library, I began researching senior living communities. Not nursing homes, but nice independent apartments with activities and no lawn to mow. I found one called The Cedars 20 minutes away. I scheduled a tour. The chessboard was set. Now I would wait for their next move. Life in the cottage became a silent performance. I stopped initiating contact. When Maya came over, I was loving but brief, pleading fatigue. I no longer offered to drive her. I stopped buying groceries for the main house. I cooked simple meals for one. If Eleanor or Robert spoke to me, I was polite, distant, a perfect and untouchable tenant. A week passed, then 2. I could feel their confusion turning to irritation. They had expected cowering, pleading, maybe a frantic job search. My calm detachment was a message they couldn't decipher, and it unnerved them. The trigger was Gerald's letter. As we had planned, he sent a formal professional letter to Eleanor and Robert. It was addressed to them as parents of Maya Harris. It stated that a trust had been established for the benefit of Maya Harris by her grandmother, Ada Mitchell. It requested copies of her upcoming tuition invoice and the school's payment information, so the trustee could arrange for direct payment. It was signed by Gerald Harris, escrow trustee. The bomb landed on a Tuesday afternoon. My phone, which had been so quiet, began to vibrate on the kitchen counter. I looked at the screen. Eleanor. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again and again. The calls came in relentless waves. Between the rings, I could see the notifications for voicemails piling up. I didn't listen to them. I simply watched the screen light up with her name over and over. The 20th call came as the sun was setting. The persistent buzzing was the sound of her panic. Finally, I picked up. I said nothing. "Mom?" Her voice was shrill, ragged from crying or yelling. "Mom, what is this? What have you done? Gerald sent us some insane letter about a trust. What are you trying to pull?" I remained silent for a beat longer, letting her anxiety peak. "The letter explains it, Eleanor. A trust has been created for Maya's education. This is about money. This is your revenge because we had a fight. You're trying to turn my daughter against me. You're trying to control us from the grave. There is no us in this, Eleanor," I said, my voice level and cold. "It is about Maya's future, something it seems I must secure for her since her parents are so financially strained." She sputtered. "You can't do this. I'll contest it. I'll get a lawyer." "You are welcome to speak with Gerald. He has all the documentation. The provenance of the funds, the ownership of the cottage, the records of our financial relationship." I let the phrase hang. "I think you'll find the trust is quite ironclad, and I am of sound mind. Multiple witnesses at the Cedars senior community can attest to that. I'm moving there next month, by the way." The silence on the other end was total. I had delivered 2 killing blows, the unassailable legal move and my voluntary departure. I had taken away both her assumed inheritance and her perceived power over my housing. She started to cry great heaving sobs. "Why are you doing this? Why are you destroying our family?" "You did that, Eleanor," I said quietly, and for the first time my voice held a trace of sadness. "When you decided your mother was a burden to be managed, not a person to be loved. When you shouted that I lived off you. You forced me to prove in the only way left to me that I do not, and I will not." I hung up. The phone did not ring again. The following weeks were a flurry of quiet, decisive activity. I met with the manager at the Cedars and put down a deposit on a sunny 1-bedroom apartment overlooking a garden. I hired a gentle, efficient moving company for a specific date. Then I sent one more letter, this time from myself to Eleanor and Robert. It was short and businesslike. I stated that I would be vacating the ADU on the 1st of the following month. As the owner of the structure, I intended to sell it. As the landowners, they had the right of first refusal to purchase it from me at its current appraised value. I included a copy of a preliminary appraisal Gerald had helped me obtain. The figure was fair but substantial. If they chose not to purchase it, I would list it on the open market, and they would have a new permanent neighbor in their backyard, a stranger who bought my little cottage. It was the ultimate financial and personal checkmate. They could either buy back their drain at a high cost, or live with the consequence of their cruelty every single day. The day Maya came to see me, her eyes red from crying, was the hardest and the best. "Grandma, they're fighting all the time. Mom is a mess. She says you hate her." I pulled her into a hug. "Oh, my sweet girl. I could never hate my daughter. But I will not allow anyone, not even her, to treat me with such disrespect. What I've done with the trust that is for you, for your freedom. So no one can ever hold money over your head or make you feel like a burden. It's my promise to you." She clung to me. "I don't want you to go. I'm not going far, and you can visit me whenever you want. Our afternoons together will just be at my new place. We'll have tea and talk about books just like always." On moving day, I took one last look around the empty cottage. The walls that had held my grief and then my defiance were just walls again. I felt a profound sorrow, but it was clean. It was the sorrow of something ending, not the sickness of something poisoned. I got into my car and drove away without looking back at the main house. I was free. Life at the Cedars is quiet. It is my own. I joined a memoir writing group. I have a friend named Helen who beats me soundly at cribbage twice a week. My arthritis is better without the dampness of the cottage. Maya visits every Sunday. We talk about school, her dreams of being a marine biologist, her complicated feelings about her parents. I listen. I offer no criticism, only love. She is the bridge, and I will not burn it. Eleanor did send a long, rambling email. It was full of apologies that tasted more of fear and regret over the lost money than true remorse for the pain caused. But it was a start. I wrote back briefly. "I accept your apology. I hope you find peace. My door at the Cedars is open to you when and if you are ready to visit me as my daughter, not as my landlord." She has not come. That is her choice. I have made my peace with it. The lesson I learned was not about wills or revenge. It was about the invisible economics of family. We keep a ledger, all of us, not of money, but of respect, of kindness, of presumed goodwill. Eleanor's ledger had become a balance sheet of resentment, and she tried to present me with the bill. I refused to pay. The greatest power an older woman has is often mistaken for weakness, the power of disengagement. The power to say, "No more," and calmly, methodically rearrange the pieces of her life so that the toxicity is left outside the new door. I am 68 years old. I lost a house, but I found myself. I lost a daughter in the way I knew her, but in letting her face the consequences of her own choices, I may have given her a chance, however late, to grow into someone else. And I protected a granddaughter's future. Sometimes courage isn't about fighting the storm, but about building a better boat after yours has been scuttled. Now I want to ask you, have you ever had to redraw a boundary with someone you loved even when it hurt? What does family truly owe each other? Is it a blank check, or is it a mutual respect that must be earned and maintained? I would really like to know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships, please give this video a like. It lets me know these shared experiences matter. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding strength later in life. And if you know someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to stand up for your own dignity, please share this with them. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find the courage to build your own sanctuary, whatever that looks like.